Well, thank you all for coming out today. Before we go to, I think this is, I apologize that one of our counselors has dropped I think their nephew or niece at summer camp today, and then we had one in Holland and one else couldn't make it, so, but we're gonna record it, we'll send it to them. And these are the top two anyways. And thank you all for the YMCA and the Friends in Action folks for coming out today. I know Matt and I have been in a lot of discussions on the YMCA lease. I think upon arriving as city manager last year, this one seemed like kind of a straightforward one, just, okay, let's move forward with the lease, and it's been a lot more complicated than that. And we've had some discussions in city council and finance committee meetings, and we're trying to switch to more of a collaborative model with the council and others on some of these bigger community decisions and how they move forward to kind of, I think, accomplish two things. One is just better outcomes as opposed to the city manager and a couple other key stakeholders, behind closed doors trying to figure things out, so we can really bring the stakeholders, not just from the council. We had a great collaborative meeting with our planning board on recreational cannabis recently, where a similar thing, we kind of brought folks together and to come to some better solutions. But also, I think for the public and for others, what I've noticed in this conversation about the YMCA lease at the Moore Center is a big, almost like a communications issue of a perception versus reality, that there's some great deal that the YMCA, they're only renting it for $1 and they charge other groups. And that kind of gets lost from to all the work the YMCA does there to manage that facility for the city. And for the last 10 years to be managing increased costs for electricity and maintenance of the building and cleaning that are more and more borne in the YMCA. And that doesn't kind of come through in a lot of, I think, the public perception. And then also the other piece, I know with Friends in Action, we talked last time around, just all the amazing work that goes on there. We kind of get stuck in this, rents the space for $1 and don't get to see this insane amount of activity that goes on in the Moore Community Center between our music groups, our seniors, the YMCA and their child care programming, and all the other programming they do there. So looking to kind of, as we proceed over the next few months, to get an updated contract for the YMCA and how we use the building to kind of bring folks together over a series of finance committee kind of workshops, so we can figure out the next 10 years of this great community space and kind of take a look what works well and what we can do better. And with that, I'll send it over to Matt for a presentation, unless council had anything they wanted to say at the beginning.
No, I'm good, thanks.
No.
All right, so I made copies. There was an error in what Nate's going to share here, and I'll point that out. One little error, there's maybe a few more.
Thanks.
Matt, if you want to leave those two, we can put them in the councils that aren't here
Definitely.
in their
Yeah,
boxes.
3 more? 4 more.
One more.
Yeah, and then there are a couple more here, but they'll be up there. So again, thank you for this opportunity to come in. We're obviously, before we even get started, want to say, how grateful we are for the relationship we have with the city going on since the Y started in 1961. We couldn't do any of it without a good relationship with the city and the support of the city. The Moore Community Center is obviously a kind of a cornerstone to the city of Ellsworth. It has a rich history. You go upstairs on the wing that has our 3rd floor where Friends in Action resides, and you can see the yearbook pictures from going back to when it was a high school. What's the first one? Yeah, I mean it's really amazing, and what this building has been transformed into, a community center that houses 3 pretty important organizations for the city, and about to be a 4th organization. So obviously right now it's home to the YMCA, Ellsworth Community Music Institute, and Friends in Action. Unfortunately, Heidi with Ellsworth Community Institute couldn't be here today, but John is here as well to answer any questions that you may have. The big thing that we want to do today is really just kind of take an opportunity to give an overview of what the Moore Community Center is. And a lot of this is what is the Y's responsibility, what's the city's responsibility in the Moore Community Center. A lot has changed in 10 years, or now 11 years since this collaboration sort of began, or the partnership began. And, there are a lot of misperceptions in the community on both on the city side and on the Ellsworth side. I'm sorry, on the Y side, and probably with some of the other organizations as well. Charlie hit on it a little bit earlier. The Y's getting this great deal. It's $1 a year lease, and they can go in there and run childcare and just make bags of money and bring it back over to the Wiggins Center. Same time, I know the city gets hounded quite a bit on giving this incredible center to these organizations for nothing. So what I did today is just kind of put together this little slideshow for you all to, again, just talk about what is this space. So right now, the space allocation is split up. The YMCA has about almost 9,000 square feet. This does include the kitchen. So if you look at the original lease, the kitchen is a shared space. Shared spaces mean that it's open to anyone, kind of first come, first serve. But really, where we run the food program for the childcare and our after-school program, we also do a program with Friends in Action there. We really kind of have ownership of the kitchen. Friends in Action comes in and they use some of the space when they do their coffee houses. We collaborate where we provide meals for seniors throughout the week. And then there are times that the kitchen is available. It is a little touchy though too, because we do have running a federal food program for the kids. You have to be careful about access and whatnot. So what might have been a vision very early on of having this big wide open kitchen for all the community to use, that's changed a little bit with this food program, which is an incredibly important program, as I'm sure Amy would talk about there's a reason why the school wants to continue providing free meals, because we know what it's like. We've seen what happens when kids don't have those free meals and what they're either being served or what they're not being served. So anyway, Friends in Action, just over 4,000 square feet. This does include the dining room, okay, to the right. If you're facing the kitchen, to the right. They have that kind of exclusively Monday through Friday from 8 to 5:30, and then it is an open and shared space after that. ECMI has 250 square feet. It's a little storage shed, closet basically, that they run their office out of. And then coming up this fall, actually it'll start this summer, Ellsworth School Department is going to have about 1,600 square feet operating out of 2 classrooms. And then the rest of the share space is about 13,000 square feet. And didn't include like all the little closets and whatnot in there, but that's really like your atrium, the theater, and the gymnasium. Okay, as well as there's a classroom, room 101, when you go down the stairs. Okay, so again, kind of color coded this for you so you can take a look. Yellow is YMCA space. The red or orange is the Ellsworth School Department space. Purple are the share spaces. This is on the main floor, conference room, atrium, and the 2 bathrooms right there. Cafeteria is Y, kitchen is mostly Y, but somewhat shared. And that other dining area is mostly FIA, but also shared as well. We can hit the next screen. So this is the 3rd floor. So this is where Friends in Action's offices are. And you'll see that FIA has priority use and really exclusive use for the most part for most of these areas here. There are 2 bathrooms upstairs as well, kind of consider those shared spaces. And then the atrium is a shared space. Sorry, the theater, not the atrium, thanks Candy. That's the theater, which is a beautiful space. ECMI does some big concerts in there on Fridays. FIA uses it for a lot of their fitness programs. We just did our preschool graduation up there. And then we'll have conferences or other groups that want to come in, because it does have multimedia capabilities in there. If we hit the next screen, this is the 1st floor. So this is not where you walk in. This is when you walk in and go down the stairs. You can either go through their dining hall, down the ramp, or you can go right down the stairs. Now, this is where there's an error on the slideshow, but it's been corrected in what I printed off for you right there. This classroom, the larger classroom, room 110, it says it's FIA space. That's supposed to be YMCA, keeping with the yellow color code. So that's where our after-school program primarily resides. This is the closet for ECMI, and then this classroom is a shared space. Okay, this is where, for instance, FEMA resided for like a month last year, and the school departments come in, they've run some programs or some trainings in that classroom before. And then there are 2 bathrooms on that floor. And then the last floor, go to the next, is the gymnasium. And the gymnasium is a shared space as well. When we get to the next couple slides, you're gonna see a schedule as an example for the week. And it's gonna show you, it's color-coded. Unfortunately, it didn't print quite the way I wanted it to. All right, so this is a snapshot of 1 week in June. This is the first week of June. So on Sunday, June 1st, we had the Rock Church, which is a rental. They come in every week and rent space. And we'll get to what those rental fees and everything are in a moment. But they rent, so they pay the Y for that rental space. We had a baby shower in the theater from 10 to 3, and there's a birthday party from 12:30 to 3:30. Again, those are rentals. Okay, we go to Monday. So this is a little more typical about what's happening in the Moore Community Center on any given day. What you're not gonna see in here is childcare unless they're taking up a shared space. A couple times you'll see childcare or after school, gymnasium, maybe you'll see it in the theater. That means that the Y program, which is there Monday through Friday, pretty much all day, is using one of the shared spaces. This is a calendar that Sean Esposito, our Moore Community Center director, manages. So you'll see we've got cribbage in the cafe, childcare is using the gym on Monday. We've got art classes upstairs. Most of these are FIA programs. We did run a YMCA mini sports in the gymnasium. That's for like preschool sports that we offered. Ellsworth Community Music Institute had the theater from 1:30 to 5:30. The Y used the conference room for a committee meeting, and there was pickleball down in the gym. That's an FIA program. And then the Grand came in, and they're doing a rental, getting ready for one of their shows, and so they were running the theater in the evening. Let's hit Tuesday. I'm not going to go through every little thing. Yeah.
Could I interrupt you and
Please.
ask a question?
Yes, of course.
You're using the word rent.
Yes.
What do you charge the Rock Church?
So
For example?
the rental rate is $30 per hour, regardless of which space is used. If they're an Ellsworth nonprofit, the rate is $20 an hour, regardless
you.
of the space used.
Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. We do have, if we're doing birthday party, there are times where we'll do pizza and we'll do cakes, so there'll be little add-ons that we can do on that, but, yeah. Tuesday was a busy day. We had a bunch of different organizations come in, Alcoholics Anonymous, Maine Psychological Services, so just a whole bunch of different things. You wanna hit Wednesday for me, please? Again, really busy. Thursday, Friday. We had go back Friday for a moment. A couple Fridays a week, the Y runs a program. You'll see when we get to the budget, there's a very small line for program fees at the Moore Community Center. Those program fees are not childcare fees. We do run some programming over there. Family Fun Night is kind of just a social event. We feed pizza and ice cream to families. It's heavily discounted if you're a Y member. If you're not, it's open to the community. Come on in. We do bingo nights there as well, but talking about like $15 a family to come in. So it's not a huge revenue thing, but it's getting people in the doors, which we think is important. If you just hit Saturday, which is the last day of the week, there's private rental in the cafeteria, and then the Grand was using the theater most of the day. Okay, thank you. We can go on to the next screen. Next is a list of the organizations that rented or used space at the Moore Community Center. So this is outside of Friends in Action, outside of the YMCA, and outside of Ellsworth Community Institute. Okay, a number of different organizations. Again, most of these are rent. Some of them are nonprofits, so you're talking about $20 an hour. Some of them are not nonprofits, are private rentals at $30 an hour. And then there are several that there's no fee for. The Arbor Commission comes in, any city entity that comes in to use this space, we don't charge for that, okay? Rental rate, again, we just kind of went over that. So ECMI is one that's a little bit different because ECMI only has that office space downstairs, 250 square feet or whatnot. So we do rent space to ECMI if they want to use any other space at $15 an hour. So if they have something up in the theater, it's $15 an hour. If they need to use another classroom for a lesson, it's $15 an hour. Entities not charged: City of Ellsworth, Ellsworth School Department, FEMA, which came in again for a month, which was a request from the City of Ellsworth for us to allow them to come in, use the space at no charge. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so this is the Moore Community Center budget for 2025. The financial responsibilities for the YMCA include electricity, LP gas, water, trash removal, desk staff, building manager, custodial staff for all spaces, liability insurance, grounds maintenance, cleaning supplies, paper products, all maintenance and repairs costing less than $5,000 per instance, including annual contracts for elevator, boilers, and heat pumps. The City of Ellsworth, all maintenance and repairs costing $5,000 or more per instance. Very recently, we had to redo the roof, which was well more than $5,000, obviously. Plowing and sanding, and public internet access, and debt services, of course, is one of the major responsibilities for the city. If we go to the next screen, please. So this is what the budget looks like if you're just looking at managing the Moore Community Center. So this is not childcare, this is not the food program, this is not FIA or ECMI and their cash flows. This is strictly management of Moore Community Center. Talked earlier about program income. Program income is budgeted about $2,000. That's those family fun nights and bingo nights, a few other things like that. Resale and rental really is just rental. That includes Ellsworth Community Institute, that includes Friends in Action, that includes all those private and nonprofit rentals, that also includes $64,000 from the YMCA Child Care. We show in this budget, Child Care rents their space to the Moore Community Center. It's cleaner for us. If we ever had to move, we have an idea of, well, this is what we were being charged for this space before, so we have an idea of what's gonna happen, okay? Salary and wages, $110,000. If you roll in payroll taxes and employee benefits, you're at almost $130,000. Allocations, almost $39,000. So allocations would be your insurances, your leases for copiers, some of me, some of our HR department, our accounts payable department. Anything that's sort of admin would be under that. Supplies at $36,000, and then occupancy, which is generally your electricity and gas and whatnot, at $73,000. So this is where there's a little bit of misperception about the why just getting a great deal, in my opinion, with the Moore Community Center. This is, if you take the Moore Community Center budget and you roll in the child care budget for the Moore Community Center, this doesn't include our site at Beachland, this is all the budgets combined. So we're adding $23,000 in grants, various child care grants that we go after. Program income, all of a sudden, looks really good. We're at $1.1 million on program income. And resale and rental stays the same, child care doesn't rent anything. Obviously, your salary and wages are gonna go up significantly, as well as your allocations. Child care admin allocations goes up significantly because we've got 100 and some odd kids that we're billing for and working with the state subsidies. There's a child care director is not in this line. We have a site director, but our overall childcare director is allocated into this, and just many more expenses. So you roll those two things together, and we're no better. We're at $148,000 at net loss. We'll take one more little look at the next budget, and this rolls in our food program. Now, the food program costs a lot of money to operate. The food program is, I touched on it a little bit earlier, and it's an incredibly important program. My wife was childcare director for like 10 years before, and she'd come home with horror stories of what kids were bringing to school to eat, to childcare, or again, what they weren't eating. So we were feeding the kids anyway. So we started this food program because we had access to this, incredible kitchen. If you haven't been in there, it's a beautiful space. The problem is we don't charge. We do charge if you roll into some of the childcare fees, but it's just a very expensive program to run. One of the things we're excited about with our new partnership with the school department is the school's been doing this for a long time. And so we actually have our food program talking with their food services director to see what we can do to run that program a little more efficiently. We're very similar in that we have to follow federal guidelines in what we're feeding the kids, which of course makes it a little more expensive, but there should be some grant money that follows that. But I just wanted to give you an idea, again, you roll all this together and everything that we're doing at the Moore Community Center, we're losing $250,000. Okay, so we're not raking in money and bringing it over to Wiggins or sharing it across the organization. Want to share with you just a little bit about Moore Community Center childcare stats. So again, this is just the Moore Community Center. This is 2024-25 school year. We had 101 children enrolled at any one given time. Some kids leave, we bring others in. There's a little bit of fluctuation there, but this was right up until school ended. So 28 infant toddlers, 33 preschoolers, 40 in after school. 23 of our enrolled children receive state subsidy, and I'll explain what that means in just a moment. 83% of the kids that are enrolled are Ellsworth residents. The rest of them generally have parents that work in Ellsworth. All right, next screen, please. Child care challenges. 2014, when we entered into this venture, child care was a lot more profitable than it is in 2025. And there are many reasons for that. In 2014, eligibility for your eligibility for getting state subsidy was you were at 85% of the state median income, okay? 2025, eligibility raised to 125, and that happened midstream. So we had kids that weren't eligible, so they were paying full rate for childcare, and then all of a sudden, they're now eligible for state subsidy, and the amount that we receive from the state is less. The other thing that happened is in 2014, the reimbursement rate from the state was closer to what we actually charge. So it was like between 90, depends on the program, the reimbursement is different for an infant all the way up to after school. But back in 2014, what we received from the state was close to 90, 95% of what we actually charged, okay? When you receive state subsidy for a child or for a family, you cannot charge the family anything extra. You can't charge them the extra amount. You get what the state determines. 2025, Hancock County is the lowest reimbursement in the state. We're the same reimbursement as Aroostook County. It's something we're fighting the state on right now because it's way out of whack. But now our state reimbursement is closer to 75%. In some cases, depending on the program, it's less than that, which means if we want to continue bringing in families that can't afford childcare, then we're gonna essentially scholarship those families, which is what we're doing. It's important to us because we know, our wait list is full of state subsidy families. We have more state subsidy families on the wait list than we do not. Other things that have happened is there's an increase in public preschool programs. Preschoolers, from infant to preschool, preschool is the most profitable cost center in childcare because of the ratios. You get down to infants, you're not gonna make money in infant care unless you charge about $540 a week, which no one's gonna do because no one's gonna pay that. Okay? So it's impossible to make any money. It's virtually impossible to make money running an infant program. So with public preschool coming in and all of a sudden there's that option for free preschool, we've seen our preschool numbers drop across Hancock County in the last couple of years. We just talked about infant and toddler care being higher costs. Thank you. So what else has changed? In 2015, which was the first full year of the Moore Community Center, the total, the net loss, or the total expense of running the Moore Community Center was $169,000, which equates to about $6 a square foot. In 2025, that number's up to $278,000, which is $9.30 a square foot. Minimum wage, we've seen a 95% increase. Electricity costs have gone up 90%. Those are all costs that we were incurring, as everyone is here. I mean, everyone's feeling that. The difference is with the way the lease was designed, there's no increase. If we had kept increases going up for Friends in Action, for Ellsworth Community Institute, they'd probably be looking at other places to go. Okay, because I'm not sure that they can afford $9.30, and maybe next year is $9.50, and then, but the other thing John might do is look at it and say, do we need all this space? We're gonna consolidate and go down to 3 or 4 rooms instead of having the majority of that floor. But then who has that cost? The way the lease is built, shared space is all on the YMCA. So, hit the next one, please. Question of, what does, what the city does pay the YMCA, $70,000 the last 2 years. And what is that money for? I'm not gonna read through all this, but it's for over $300,000 worth of services. Not a gift, just like what John receives and what the library receives. These aren't gifts. These are services that the city can't or doesn't offer. So, again, there's 3 pages of that, and it just kind of goes right through exactly what those different services are. I do have a copy as well. John shared what his funding request was to the city as far as what services they offer. I can't tell you, again, how important that organization is, how many people they're bringing through the doors every day. You go back to that schedule, most of that program schedule in the shared spaces and in the art room that's part of FIA. The incredible amount of programs, and not just fitness classes, it's not just bridge, their educational services. I know that they work with the school department as well. We're excited about the school coming in. Amy and I have talked about this for a while. There is opportunity for the Y. If there's public pre-K at the Y, some of those families might need before or after school care. Great, they don't have to move. You don't have to get those kids on a bus. They can do it right then and there. It's not the same as us receiving the full preschool care the whole time, but also bringing them in, should it be the Y's responsibility to cover the electricity, to cover the custodial, to cover the food, to cover the paper. I mean, that's, and again, Amy and I have been talking about this and trying to hash it out. Does it make sense for the city to charge the school department to come into its own building? I mean, that's a perception. You put that out on Facebook and people are gonna go crazy. But it's all about perception, and perception's just been skewed as of late. And really, we love being at the Moore Center. It's been an incredible fit for our organization. And we do utilize it. I showed you up there where we bring in our youth sports department to use the little gym for the preschoolers so they're not overwhelmed in the big gym. You know, we had our annual meeting in the atrium last year. It was a great spot to bring in the community for that. It's an incredible building, brings in hundreds of community members a week. The Y is just feeling the burden of it now. And again, with the school coming in and no relief, we're just feeling like we're not sure how to move forward with this. I know there was some conversation a couple weeks ago about the city taking back over the Moore Center. We'd certainly had that conversation. I mean, if we were paying rent at $6.25 a square foot, our bottom line would look a lot better. We're open, obviously, for negotiation. We're open to talk about this. The lease, the way it stands when it was written in 2014, is not sustainable for the YMCA at this point in time because of everything I just laid out there. We want to continue with the city. We want to continue with these other great organizations. Super looking forward to the school department. That's going to bring a whole new level to this. But we've got to make some, in my opinion, we've got to make some changes to how everything's written out.
Yeah, and
So.
I would just say, just to kind of reiterate some of those points, but also I think one of the central challenges I've faced, at least my general perception, we interviewed 5 Parks and Rec director candidates last week after 50 applicants. Spectacular folks, all of whom have great Ellsworth connections, but all of them also, one of their biggest things was like they were shocked that we don't have a Parks and Rec department here, and they said, but you have all these Parks and Rec like assets, like who in the world is managing all this stuff? And the answer is like, the YMCA and
Kimberly Fitch at the
yeah,
Grand.
Kimberly Fitch at the Grand, and 12 different staffers here in our Public Works Department, and our Planning Department, and the Economic Development Department, and the City Manager's Office. I think that worked in 2014 when the city was much smaller and couldn't really manage all these assets or coordinate and centralize these control pieces. And it was a great deal for the city and for the YMCA to not have to kind of build those management assets as they redeveloped the Moore Center to be more of a community center without building out a department that could actually manage that. But over time, like the lease in the contract is almost guaranteed to put more and more inflation costs, rental costs on the YMCA, and then they're faced with a very difficult conundrum, which is, do you have one nonprofit charge the other nonprofits that are also using the space more and more money to help shoulder that burden? Or do you just keep eating more and more of the costs? And it's sometimes becomes unsustainable. And this is a bigger problem too, because our business attraction plan, one of our key items is expanding childcare access. It's we need that piece. We have a fair amount of candidates here that we've had staff that have used that facility, and it's becoming more and more expensive with the addition of the school, as you mentioned. There's a lot of research on this. Pre-K is awesome to offer it from the schools. It also really hurts childcare providers because it's that most profitable piece that the schools are essentially taking away from the Y. And it's not that these aren't, this isn't Boston. We don't have very for-profit charging, basically college tuition level rates to so that you can send kids to daycare. So, and I know we've talked in the finance committee. I've talked to many of the councils privately too. It puts me into a difficult position. I think Matt as well, into like how, when there's already a perception that the YMCA is getting this great deal, when I don't really feel like that's the case. How do we change that perception through a smaller modification to the contract that actually would make it seem like the Y is getting more of a great deal, I think, in some ways. So that's going to be I think that's problematic. So do we pull back to having the city? Now we have a Parks and Rec director, and we're having the school come in to have a little bit more involvement in the management of the YMCA, the Moore Community Center, and operating and renting all of those spaces to these groups. There's a little bit for me, I think, of be careful what you wish for, and that the city will be much more public about how much costs we're going to be incurring for managing, operating the Moore Community Center building going forward. But to me, I think that puts the appropriate cost burden onto the entity that owns the facility, and and needs to operate it, and to do so at reasonable rates for the incredible nonprofits that use it mostly, and then also offer, generally subsidized rates for those other groups. Because when the school comes in there, or when these nonprofit groups that are at charge $20 or $40, like, there's cleaning costs, there's additional electricity costs, there's additional food costs. My second cousin is living us through the summer, and, my cousin said, "Oh, let me give you some." I said, "No, don't worry about it, it'll be fine. Like, it's just we have an extra room." Like, no, we're going to incur a lot more costs having my cousin here for the summer. And the Y keeps kind of holding more and more of that, but I feel like that perception that they're getting this great deal just isn't there. So how do we move forward? I'm kind of inclined towards the city taking it over responsibility for all costs, and giving the Y the same subsidized rate that we continue with Friends in Action, and then maybe a lease structure that could have a set amount of increase, just so the city doesn't bear all of the burden of that inflationary cost moving forward. But it might be, especially with the new Parks and Rec director coming on board, to really it's a big kind of year one piece to start figuring out with Amy at the school on how that transition might work out towards the next budget cycle. And so we can kind of, right size this, and also get back to like talking about all the spectacular things that go on at the Moore Community Center. And I know talking to Chair Beal, who, like, the original inception for this was that so that children and music and our senior citizens and the community, like Ellsworth, didn't have a community recreation space before the Moore Community Center came along. And when the school moved out, like, that was the time to, like, hey, let's create our community center. So, and that's like, that dream in many ways has already been realized. So let's get this fairness piece figured out, so that we can kind of keep that amazing stuff going on there, expanding in childcare, expanding in our recreational programming for the people that live here, all the nonprofits and amazing stuff that's going forward. But I'm eager to kind of hear council's thoughts too, and on if they're more inclined towards the city operating the space and us moving towards that route, or sort of modifications so that the YMCA can stop eating as much of the cost burden in here. And I know there's a lot of information here, so that might be something that we might have to revisit a few times as a finance committee and council, especially with the more full council here. But I'll leave it to the two of you for any additional questions.
I personally would like to have like another workshop, like with the full council. I think this is a big decision for the entire city, and having all the council here, I'd like to see some numbers. What would that look like if we were to take it over?
Okay.
That's the type of information that I need before I can make any sort of decision. So, but my son went to daycare to after school, has been a big part of it, and I helped, with Michelle kind of creating the whole Moore Community Center, working on that project with her, watched it being torn apart and then building it back up, and then seeing such a great relationship between the little kids and the seniors. It just really, really worked, and I love to see that, and I want this to continue. Just need to figure out the best way for the city, as well as the YMCA and Music Institute and Friends in Action, so.
Thank you. Yeah, we're all in the same boat. We have no desire to go back to portable classrooms behind the Y.
I remember that too.
Right, yeah. I mean, it's an incredible space. I think that the vision, it has become what the vision was all about. Now, we just need to kind of regroup and kind of figure out what's sustainable going forward. Because for the Y anyway, this is not financially sustainable.
You're up, Steve.
I think that this is a great thing for the community. One of the challenges that I have is this view that the Y is getting a great deal. I'll rephrase that. I don't know where that the Y would pay $1 a year to go into a building. But the way I see this is you lost $268,000 in your operations, according to this data.
At the Moore Center.
Right. So where are you getting that money to cover that loss, is my question.
So as an organization, in 2024, we were net, I think, about $28,000. So we have operations, obviously, we run Moore Center, we have the Beachland Child Care Center, we've got center in Bucksport, center in Blue Hill, and the Wiggins Center. The majority of our annual income comes from membership and day camp and child care revenue. Almost 70% of our expenses are tied into salaries. We raise, as an organization, an annual campaign for the whole Down East Family Y organization, under $200,000 a year. So we do get some grant money, as you saw on the child care side of it. It's not covering our losses by any means, but primarily, again, revenue is membership and program, with a small amount. I think it's roughly 4% is from contributed dollars, meaning like annual campaigns and sponsorships.
So, to clarify, the WISE financial picture looks much better than this. This is just the Moore Center.
Correct. In
So what is-
2024, it did
if
look.
if I could continue.
I'm sorry, yeah.
In the workshops going forward, I would think it would make sense to see the whole financial picture, not just this little sector
Sure.
of the Y.
Be happy with-
Because
yeah.
this is a loss for you. And my question is, you can't lose money without putting cash in to cover that loss. And that cash is coming from someplace, okay? And I would like to see maybe the whole picture, not just this picture of
Sure.
the Y. And the reason why is that building is costing the Y $268,000 to operate, according to these numbers. And again, I love everything that goes on there, but in quick math, we've got the city pays $26,000 a month in debt service. That's $312,000 a year. The city gives the Y $70,000 towards operation costs. And I'm estimating that the city spends $50,000 a year maintaining that building. Now, that's a shot in the dark as far as, the first two numbers are concrete. 50 grand a year, I don't know if that's reality or not, but I know recently they spent 180 putting a roof on. Okay, so I'm just picking 50 grand a year, $1,000 a week roughly, between plowing and sanding, public internet, and maintenance. I'm just picking that number. Maybe that number's 30,000. So please understand that
Yeah.
that's a shot from the hip. If that shot from the hip is somewhere near right, then the city, if you add 70,000 to the debt service, the 362 a year, 70,050 for maintenance. 70 is the donation.
Sure.
Comes to 432,000. So as we sit here today, the city is contributing 432,000 to this issue, and you're contributing 268,000 to this issue. My challenge is this. I love all the programming, I love everything about it. But if the city is bringing $432,000 to the equation today, and you're bringing 268,000 to the equation today, I'm struggling with the Y taking their problems and asking more to make our problems bigger. I'm struggling with that. And I'm hoping you can give me some clarity, because if you're contributing 268,000 and we're contributing 432,000, there's a cost there, okay? We're paying 432, you're paying 268, okay? So right now, the city is paying more than the Y. And I'm struggling with the Y asking the city to pay more. Because I think the city is paying 432 grand a year as it is. which is less than the Y is paying. And I struggle with that. I love the programming, I love all of that. But that's why I struggle with that
I
whole
understand that-
process. And if I could
Yeah,
continue.
Of course.
I'm not saying that there shouldn't be a workout here, but really we're talking about a deficit of 268 and 432. How do we as a community tackle that deficit? Okay? The city is used to the 432 part. Okay? That's the deal that was made. But the why losing money, I understand on that building, but I'd like to see the bigger picture. And is there a workaround that we all can work on this problem together? Not the why looking at just the city to overcome this gap. That's, I think, really what we're talking about here. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So I would just turn it a little bit. I mean, we're here, and the reason why Charlie and I have been working for over a year is to try and come up with a solution. Again, we're not saying take it back. I mean, that could be an option. I mean, where the Y just says we can't sustain this any longer. This is hurting the rest of our operations so much. We need to exit the Moore Center. We need to get out of childcare. That's not at all what we want to do. What we've been trying to do, again, for a year, is try and figure out how to make this equitable and how to make sure that, you know, the message that goes out to the community, people understand what's going on at the Moore Center. I mean, the way it stands right now, you, the city, could come in and say, we're gonna take over this spot, this spot. It's your building. You could, the school's coming in, the FEMA came in last year. I mean, anytime you wanted, you could take some of those pieces, and the way it's written out right now, the extra financial burden of that would come onto the Y. When FEMA was in there for a month, using more electricity, using toilet paper, using whatever, and that's the Y's responsibility. You know, and yeah, $1 a year is amazing, but it's more than that, right? And the reason why we're here, the reason why we have Amy here and why we have John here and why Heidi wants to be a part of this is we want this to be sustainable for the Moore Community Center, for the community. And it's not sustainable right now for the Y. You know, and we're not coming here and saying you need to take over all of this, but we do. We need to, I agree with Tammy, we need to sit down together, get the council together, get all these organizations together and hash it out and be open about it like we are right now so that the community can hear what's going on in there. I don't think the community sees all these events that are happening out there. Okay, they don't know all the stuff that John's doing. They don't know everything that's happening up at, all the free concerts happening at in the theater. You know, they recognize that the Y has childcare. Childcare clearly makes a ton of money, and the Y gets that for $1 a year. I mean, that's a perception that's out there. That's a lot of the perception. I see it on Facebook, I read it, you know, and you guys are very much in the same boat. The perception is that you've just dealt over this incredible property to the Y for $1. How foolish is that, right? That's the perception that's out there. Or
Yeah,
some of the
and Steve,
perception.
to your point, Tammy, I think, for the next workshop, for the next piece.
Full council.
Yeah, full council. I'm glad we still get to do this touch point to kind of start seeing some of the guardrails and the data that you'll need. But yeah, you know, going back to the original decision, you have extremely expensive building to maintain and operate over time. We've had a roof replacement, all the pieces you've made, Tammy, and Steve. I'll try to get Steve, just so it's not kind of from the hip on what those costs are that the city's currently bearing, and you know, and that the Y, so the city's bearing more and more costs in that piece, and the YMCA is, I think, bearing the lion's share of the increase though as well. And I think that's one of the things that's troubled me is that we might risk not having this critical asset for the economy. I mean, that would be an unmitigated disaster to not have Ellsworth have this piece in here. So if we're gonna switch to more of the other rates that we charge the other nonprofits per square foot to keep the YMCA here, to keep all these other pieces, that's gonna be probably an increase in cost and operations and the other pieces. And maybe at the next council workshop, we could talk a little more about what that would mean, just to provide, I think, the same deal and the great benefit and service that we're getting for it, but to know the true cost of it and to not have the YMCA kind of be bearing the political burden and the financial burden of the increasing costs of that building and operations and expanded services. And I'm trying to think of any other pieces that, so I'll get the financial costs of the cities specified out. We'll get some rough estimates of where if the city were to take it over entirely, and then recharge the YMCA the same rates that we're charging the other nonprofit groups, what that would go towards. I mean, I could see a scenario where the Y says, we're not gonna continue forward in this lease structure and let us know what you want to charge for rent. And then the city would be in a position of having to immediately take over that building, and try to figure out a structure that doesn't lose all the childcare for the city immediately. And then also charge the other buildings, and then trying to figure out how to clean it and how to maintain it and to pay all the electricity. So I really appreciate the Y's patience and your board and others as well on this. And
If I may, we're talking about a $700,000 problem. And there isn't anything in that building that I want to see go away. $268,000 you're bearing, and the city's bearing $432,000. There's no challenge about what's going on in that building. The challenge is, we have a $700,000 problem, and we need to address the problem.
I couldn't agree more, Steve. I think that's kind of the story of Ellsworth in a lot of these things,
Yeah.
is depreciating assets and how do we pay for them?
This gentleman had his hand up. I'd like to hear your comment.
My name's Matt Bowles. I'm from Ellsworth. I'm the chairman of the board for the YMCA. So we go through, same as you guys, do all of our finances, and we sit down. So we're talking about the overall picture, and Matt told you we made a net $20,000. It's basically a break even, right? So you're a businessman, Steve. If you have a portion of your business that's losing 250 and the rest of it is subsidizing it, we need to look at our business, because now what we can't do with the Y is put money back into Wiggins. We can't expand other pieces of the Y, add more programs, because it's all getting sucked into the Moore Center. So from a board level standpoint, we're looking at how we get above break even, how we can reinvest in our properties, and we are being severely hamstrung by the costs that are going into the Moore Center. So I'm not sure the 268 who should be burdening it, but it's tough to say that the Y should be burdening that cost.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if you're losing 268 and we're losing 432, we got a $700,000 problem. We got to work together. That's the issue. Is that's where we're at.
So just want to point that out too. So, you know, you at least have an asset when it's all said and done. We really don't have anything at the end of the day. So thank you guys.
Well, thank you. I'll touch base with you, Matt, maybe afterwards, real quick. We'll circle up on kind of next steps and.
How about anybody else want to speak?
Sorry, I do have to go.
We're done?
Thank you all.
Thank you, appreciate it.